Good evening, and hello from the United States. My name is Gayle Manchin, and I am chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USCIRF. We are a bipartisan, independent legislative branch agency that makes recommendations to the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, and the U.S. Congress on ways to advance freedom of religion and belief worldwide. Our 9 commissioners are appointed by the majority and minority party leaders of Congress and by the President. And while we are a U.S. government agency, we monitor religious freedom according to the international standards, including religious freedom protections outlined in Articles 18 of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Even though USCIRF is a part of the United States government, its staff heavily rely on the facts and reporting of civil society actors on the ground and human rights organizations, both in the government and regionally. Panel discussions like this are critical for bringing together our many voices to discuss ongoing issues from our unique perspectives, as well as for building networks to further research, advocacy, and collaboration. I'd like to thank Susanna Liu for the invitation to speak here and for her hard work in organizing this panel. I regret I could only lend my voice in this pre-recorded message, and yet I am confident that discussions that this panel's distinguished speakers will engage in will be both illuminating and inspiring. Susanna has been a tireless and courageous advocate for her husband and for those who have disappeared and the religious freedom of all people in Malaysia. Last year, I was thrilled to hear the news that she had won the International Woman of Courage Award. I offer her my much belated congratulations for this well-deserved honor. Congratulations, Susanna. One of USCIRF's central missions is its annual report, which we release by the 1st of May each year. This report contains a chapter for each country that our staff and commissioners have determined meet the threshold of either a country of particular concern, or CPC for short, or the special watch list, as mandated by the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. CPC countries are the worst violators of religious freedom in the world, committing egregious, systematic, and ongoing violations of freedom of religion and belief. Our second tier, the special watch list, is for those countries that meet 2 of the requirements, but not all 3. Malaysia, unfortunately, has met the standard for USCIRF to recommend its inclusion in that second category every year since 2014. In addition to USCIRF's annual report, our staff regularly pursue projects to highlight specific multinational themes of religious freedom violations or to provide updates on a given country. In October of last year, we released a report on the Rohingya refugees in Southeast Asia, which focused especially on Malaysia's treatment of refugees and migrants. In October 2019, our staff also released a fact sheet in response to the April report by Suhakam on enforced disappearances, a number of which included a crucial religious freedom element. Both Pastor Raymond Koh and Omri Sheikh were 2 individuals USCIRF highlighted in this report as having been forcibly disappeared, at least in part, for their faith practices and or identity. Even with the global fight against the coronavirus pandemic and the current state of emergency in Malaysia, it is imperative that we maintain the pressure for greater respect for freedom of religion and belief there, As you know intimately, Malaysia has experienced unprecedented levels of political crisis and turbulence during this last year. In these emotionally charged times, it is vital that civil society, members of the government, and average citizens recall the strength and harmony that Malaysia's diversity brings. Stronger religious freedom protections, not just for minority religious communities, but also for the majority, can only bring greater harmony as each community is freed to pursue their faith or none at all, according to their own conscience. In reporting, USCIRF has highlighted the religious freedom implications of Malaysia's dual legal system, which enforces a state-sponsored interpretation of Islam on all Muslims without allowing any space for their ability to opt in or opt out. Additionally, this system has implicated many individuals who identify as Muslim, but not as Sunni Muslim in particular, into a religious legal system to which their understanding of their faith does not subscribe. We have also been alarmed in recent weeks at the increased rhetoric and attacks by state and federal religious departments against members of the Muslim LGBT community. Despite all its shortcomings and recent political turbulence, Malaysia is still an example of democracy and a place where the freedom of expression, rule of law, and interreligious harmony can yet be found in a region filled with authoritarianism, corrupt governments, and interreligious and ethnic conflict. This rich potential is why USCIRF has often urged the U.S. government to work with its partners in the Malaysian government to solidify its foundation of human rights through ratification of international human rights treaties, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. As I mentioned earlier, in October 2019, USCIRF published a fact sheet detailing the findings and religious implication of Suhakam's report on enforced disappearances. In that report, we alerted the U.S. government to the religious freedom dimension of the disappearances of both Omri Sheikh and Raymond Koh. These individuals were undeniably targeted in part for their religious practices and identity. In November 2020, my colleague, Commissioner Jim Carr, adopted Pastor Koh through USCIRF's Religious Prisoner of Conscience project. This project is a commissioner-led endeavor to raise the profile of individuals whose cases are illustrative of a trend or are otherwise noteworthy for their egregious nature. Pastor Koh's disappearance at the hand of security forces, as well as the disappearances of other individuals mentioned in the course of this discussion, represent an ominous turn for Malaysia. Such a turn does not do the diverse peoples of Malaysia justice. USCIRF will continue to raise the case of Pastor Koh in its publications, in its conversations and recommendations to the President and the Congress of the United States, and in its interactions with the Malaysian government and civil society. We continue to be discouraged by the reluctance of Malaysia's Special Task Force to release its findings on the investigation into the disappearances of Raymond Koh and others. USCIRF adds its voice to the calls by civil society for the release of this report and for the government of Malaysia to make good on its own promises to pursue justice and transparency on this issue, as well as to prevent further disappearances and other such injustices from occurring. In conclusion, I want to thank you all again for your time and again for including me in this discussion. A crucial component of our work in pre-pandemic times was travel to meet activists and leaders such as all of you. I sincerely look forward to the opportunity, as soon as this pandemic is over, for USCIRF commissioners and staff to meet with each of you in person, whether in Malaysia or here in the United States. In the meantime, please do consider USCIRF in your work. For while we cannot meet in person, we are still connected, as this panel demonstrates, and there is much work yet to be done. I wish each of you and all of you well, and would like to conclude by reiterating USCIRF's deep admiration for your tireless work to build a Malaysia that respects the international standards of freedom of religion and belief and truly fosters harmony for all of its people. Thank you.